skill set is what you transition to the career example that you just used.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that your dream job was to be a senator because you wanted to make a difference and help people. Would you say, looking at a full circle, that when you became an entrepreneur, you wanted to use those same ideas of becoming a senator into what you do today?
Yeah, I think I don't know that there was a term for it, but there's two things that when it comes to business, I think make me stand apart. And the first thing is, I very much am a social entrepreneur. And so my sports construction company, Texas Athletics Construction, we build, athletic surfaces, football fields, basketball courts, whatever. But we do it with a philanthropic intention from the beginning. And so we'll partner with the nonprofit and, based upon the completion of a project, a large amount of revenue from that project will be earmarked for that nonprofit. And so we'll partner with that nonprofit to go do the community work where, so many places in the corporate setting say, okay, we've got 50,000 bucks sitting around, I'd rather give it away in the community than pay it in taxes. Let me go find somewhere to go, not say dump this money, but like go dump this money. Right. And so the first thing is, I very much am a social entrepreneur. And I think that part of me was derived from the desire to give, that kind of senator thing. The second thing is, Alex, I love the disruption model. And so, for your listeners who aren't familiar, the disruption model in a nutshell, if I were to describe it, is Tom's shoes is a great example, right? So I've got a pair of shoes here, want to sell for a base price, let's call it 20 bucks, right? But for every pair of shoes that we sell, we're going to give away a pair to an underserved pocket. So not only is that social entrepreneurship, but there's also the disruption model. Now, where the disruption model comes in is, business is typically all about commerce and transaction and making money. But what the disruption model, where it goes into effect is, I'm going to take a relatively analog business system and find a way to turn it upside down. Mm-hmm. And so, that's what I did with my construction company. And while it certainly was not the intent, what it did was it gave us an amazing, unique selling proposition, a value proposition. And so, we started in the residential space. And so I'd, go out and have an appointment with a client, and we'd look at their, backyard and kind of mark it off and everything. And, you kind of finish up and say, okay, well, this is, kind of based upon what we see, roughly $25,000 for this project. But I tell you what, if you're willing to write this nonprofit a $3,000 check, I'll sell this to you for $22,000. And, it wasn't intended to be hokey. Again, it was like my way of, funding the philanthropic endeavors I was doing. But what it truly is from a business perspective is the unique value proposition. So the guy who comes behind me, quotes the same thing and the specs are the same. And so as that person sitting at their dining room table making a choice, they can go with this guy who's going to build them a court and then put 25,000 bucks in his pocket or whatever the difference is in margin. Or, this guy who maybe is going to give up some of his margin, but he's actually going to go do some good with, with the resources I'm going to award him to his project. And, the social entrepreneurship plus the disruption model has opened so many doors. And not just from a feel-good tug, right? Because everybody that you partner with, not everyone makes emotional decisions or makes, decisions based upon the good of everybody else. But what it does do is open people's eyes to there is more than one way to do business and to do things.
Was that your biggest strategy going into creating that company, was how do I stand out in a way, and you kind of knew that this wasn't something that was being done?
Yeah, so that I started that company in the Lenten season of 2017, and I'm a Christian, and I definitely enjoyed the Lenten season, and it's a season of reflection. It's a season of spiritual closeness. It's a season of it's a challenging season, right? Because if you're making a sacrament that's a sacrifice, you're hungry, you're tired, you're not at your full, but you're always kind of leaning on God. Like, I don't think I'm making a good choice, so let me kind of lean on you and like provide for me. And I was walking, I was taking the call in my front yard, and I just remember getting off the call, and it was like, okay, where are you? Like, you're doing okay in business, you're providing all that kind of stuff, but you're that's not the only thing you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to also be giving and serving and leading. And so I was kind of, you know, convicted with this, like, what's the next step? And you know, like we talked about earlier, you kind of look back in the inventory and say, okay, well, what you got? So I know sports construction, I know how to sell it, I know how to build it, I know how to assemble teams, I know how, you know, to execute it. And I also know, at the time, I had started my first community program as a turkey drive. Um, and I also knew that I had, kind of going back to the story I shared with you, like leaving out of, you know, that bad community from a young age. I knew that I had an obligation. Like, I know that the only reason that the doors were open to me was because, you know, my family moved. The same kid in the same situation in the other neighborhood would not be afforded a fifth of the opportunities that I had. So I have an obligation to manufacture or to create some opportunities for the kids and families who need those same opportunities. The kids who live in underserved and under pocket and families who live in these areas aren't any better or any worse, right? I mean, they're this, they're brilliant minds. They're beautiful families, wholesome families, and under every single roof. It doesn't matter where that roof is, or, you know, how well that roof is put together. And so, you know, I did always have this burden of, I need to give back and I need to serve. And so that's the origin of the story of why I started the company. And you know, the outcome of it was un unequal in a positive way, unequal success. And I say that, you know, I'm not even comfortable really saying that, right? So it's like, I'm not saying that I'm successful, I'm not saying that I made it, but, you know, that company is still alive, thriving, doing great work, and the doors have been open to that company for even, you know. So from there, I started in residential, and then within like a year and a half, I was awarded my first commercial job. And typically, you know, you're in the business 5 or 10 years before you can even sniff getting a commercial job or a government job, a government contract. And so, you know, again, you think about pulling at heartstrings and doing things for the right reason. Well, that may work if you're sitting at someone's, you know, dinner table. When you're being procured for a government contract, they don't care what, you know, what you're doing with the money. They want to know, can you get the work done at a value price? And, you know, do you have your ducks lined up? And so, you know, that's where, you know, your character comes in, because you're not partnering with a resident. I'm not saying, Alex, cut this check for, you know, for this nonprofit. The whole check's being handed to me. So now I've got to go cut this check. And so your character gets tested. And so, you know, I'm saying all that to say that, you know, being extremely true to who I am and learning in my failures, sitting in my unknown moments, you know, seeking advice and counsel, being true to my faith is what launched Texas Athletics. And, you know, the work that we do gives me purpose and mission way more than any tangible, you know, gift or trinket.